Hi everybody, I'm Sharon Pegg. Welcome to another edition of the Engagement Tree. We've also got Ben with me as well, and I'm really proud to introduce Gill Bryant. Gill is a leadership specialist. She's also the director of Qdos Leadership. Gill has worked with many huge leaders with lots of brands that we all know in her career, which is vast over many years. Gill is somebody who I have worked with personally and professionally, and I've seen the added value that Gill adds to businesses. So welcome, Gill.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for asking me.
Welcome, Gill. Nice to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Ben, do you want to go with the first question?
So, Gill, Sharon obviously has spoke an awful lot about you, and it was great to have you come in on the show to get an insight into your thoughts. So, being a leadership expert and working in the field that you are, very keen to understand. Leadership is something we are always talking about, but what examples have you seen of good leaders?
Well, I've been really privileged, Ben. I've been doing this job 15 years, and I've definitely, had experience, been exposed to and seen examples of some fantastic leadership. I think if I was going to kind of give you an actual individual that I know really well, that for me really encompasses leadership and exactly what it should look like, it's a gentleman called Martin Donegay, and I've known Martin for over 10 years. He absolutely encompasses what leadership is. He's definitely seen as a thought leader. Okay. So all those people that work with him, gravitate towards him for advice. He's definitely somebody you want to listen to. But the key thing about this is that he really understands the significance of those fundamental kind of skills and qualities that you need in leadership. First and foremost, he absolutely acknowledges that if you make a mistake or you fail, then you tell people, you talk about it, you expose it, you sit and you reflect on it, you allow it to kind of help you become better and better at what you do. He communicates constantly at all levels, and he doesn't become a caricature of what he thinks leadership is. He's absolutely authentic and genuine, definitely. He also, for me, which I find brilliant, and I've had experience of this, is that he also understands that just because you're the most senior person in an organisation doesn't necessarily mean that you're the most effective leader in that organisation. So actually what he does, when he's introduced me, in fact, I've known him for over 10 years, so he's taken me when I was working for a fantastic company called Red Sky and now working for Qdos. He's always taken kind of me in to do his leadership programs. He always starts at the top. He's always been at a very senior level, and he always starts at the top. The leadership development starts at the executive board, and then it gets cascaded through. He is definitely somebody that I would acknowledge and say is almost like a mentor of mine as well. So even though I've done work for him, I use him as a mentor. I definitely seek advice. So he's a great example, but it's the communication, the clarity, the transparency, and that absolute kind of courageousness around kind of taking some risks and not being frightened of failing, which is really important in leadership. So that would be a great example for me.
So adapting, flexibility, that is some of the qualities that are needed.
You absolutely, yeah. I think what you do is, one of the things that Martin had an experience in very senior leadership as a chief exec, where he made a strategic decision, and he was hearing from, obviously I'm not going to discuss what that is, but he was hearing from his people that, I don't think this is working. Now, rather than kind of sitting back, where I kind of would suggest that some leaders would, where they go, well, I've made that decision, so we're doing it. He went, right, I hear you. And he just stopped it and pulled it and went back to how it should have been. And that takes courage to admit that you might have been wrong on something, put a lot of work in to get it to where it needed to be, and then people say it's not working. It takes courage to say, right, okay, well, we're going to stop it, cut it, and we're going to do something else. And it was significant, this particular thing that he introduced. But he had the courage to go, no, it hasn't worked, so we're going to go back to the way it was. That's leadership.
So certainly there must be a vast amount of trust on that platform to be able to do that. And there's also that trust, I guess, with leaders that we might not be the best person for that particular task. So there might be other skills that we have to press part of the team on so that they can also step into that leadership piece.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody that knows me and has worked with me, as you have, Sharon, they know that I'm incredibly fond of saying that leadership is not a job title. It's a skill, quality and behaviour that anybody at any level can bring into your organisation, bring into your business. If you have the courage to nurture and develop that culturally within your organisation, you are going to reap the benefits, because you need both. What we know is that leadership and management are not mutually exclusive. You absolutely need both.
Yeah.
And when we think about the situation we currently find ourselves in, for those businesses that are now sitting back and kind of thinking about how they're going to put a strategy in place to either survive or sustain and maintain where they are, or even actually become successful through this, you know, believe it or not, you know, some very critical and arenas of crisis produce success. It's you know, it's very interesting. But they know that they need both leadership and management. The leadership is going to give you that clarity of purpose, sense of direction. It's going to give you the strategy, what we need to do and why we need to do it, you know, if we think of it like that. The management is going to be the operational, the delivery, actually getting the job done. It's the how we're going to do it. The two are a partnership. You know, you shouldn't do one at the expense of the other. I mean, that's really important. And if you have a leadership team that really understand that within their organisation, they nurture it. They nurture it. And not all individuals need to be good at both. What you do is, if you're not good at both, put somebody else in that's good at the other stuff.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
I think leadership and management, from my time in business, managers manage teams, leaders work for their people. And I often find that the best leaders understand that they're in post not to have teams of people working for them, but they're in post to make those decisions for those people. They are bestowing to their whole organisation. I think some of the best leaders understand that the post that they sit in, the further up they go, the more people that they actually have to work for, and the more people that they're responsible for.
Yeah, they're absolutely responsible for that. But what I would suggest is that if you've got somebody who is good at people management, if they can bring some of those other skills that we are looking for within leadership, it gives them the edge. You know, if I'm sat at a very senior position within an organisation and I can give my team autonomy, responsibility, if we look at where we are currently, Ben, with the current situation we find ourselves in, what we know is that this current situation is definitely going to be a massive driver for change. Okay?
Yes.
So leading change is going to be one of the key things that we're going to have to look at going forward. You need a team of people that can tune into the environment, that continue challenging the status quo, that are communicating aspiration, that are continuing to build the right kind of alliances, they're transferring ownership and responsibility of what they need to achieve, and they're learning to persevere. Having a strong leadership at the top, giving that clarity of direction, that sense of purpose, and actually not just rewarding and recognising those outstanding achievements, but actually making a lot of noise for those people that are just living the values, behaving in the right way, you know, bringing that level of loyalty into your organisation and helping you achieve what you need to achieve with those small gestures. You know, that's kind of where we need to be.
Yeah.
And anything in particular that you would be coaching these leaders in, or any focused assessments you would be using as a tool?
Well, I'm a big fan of any kind of tool that gives us additional information. You know, anything that kind of enables us to heighten self-awareness in people. I think that's one of the key things. Yeah. So, you know, if we're talking about any kind of psychometric personality profile, 360, any survey, any kind of, even a calibration exercise can give you that kind of information. Although all calibration exercises are now done at the moment remotely. But actually getting around the table with people and having conversation can really kind of become very informative. However, I think we have to caveat all this stuff, Ben, because I think sometimes what we do is we use these tools in order to kind of get some of this information, but then if it's not facilitated or coached properly, people take it literally. Yeah. You know, I think we are much more complex than a 4-page synopsis in a psychometric book. And if we're looking at where we need to be in leadership going forward, following this particular situation, this crisis we find ourselves, we're going to have to be much more omni-skilled, you know, multifaceted. So use those tools to find out what your starting point is, but understand that you might have to learn and develop some particular skills in order to really achieve and adapt and flex to where we currently are. And I think that's what I'd be coaching people in. You know, maximize your strengths first. Always maximize your strengths.
So what would you say that your top tips are for leaders to bring out the best in people?
In the current situation?
In the current situation.
I've got a big one here, and I'm going to just put it out there straight away. We need to absolutely develop some crisis management. I think it's a skill that is potentially lacking in a lot of organisations. I think some of them have it. They have some kind of protocol, parameter around it, policy around it, but it's kind of on the back cupboard. It's like, gathering dust on the back cupboard, because they actually live from that day-to-day operational, this will never happen kind of situation. We'll never have to dust down the crisis management folder because, it's never going to happen. I think we have to make it, kind of put it in the forefront of how we work going forward. I think to be able, as an organisation, to be able to predict, plan, prevent, monitor, and then recover from something that is going to threaten our businesses, for me, has to be an absolutely critical skill set of any leadership team in any organisation. That's something that I think we need. I'm going to, after when this is over and we're out of lockdown, I am going to go on a crisis management program. I really want to do it. Because again, it's not my bag, but what I've realised is it's my husband's bag, which is why we're kind of in a very good position at the moment. But it's because he was predicting all this, before it even happened. So, I'm definitely going to go on a crisis management program. I think it's if anybody's going to do anything after this, do that first. So next time something comes, we're actually ready for it. Yeah. We're not surprised by it.
And I think I would add to that as well about really understanding yourself and how you respond in crisis, so that you can actually manage your own responses too and manage them.
I like a level of reality. One of the things that I'm constantly saying to people that I work with is, let's work in fact. I'm not keen on assumption. I'm not that keen on people presuming things based on probability. Probability is one thing, fact is another. I do think we have to be open to the things that are unseen, and I get that. But I think when we're living in a crisis, then we have to kind of take every day as it comes. But absolutely, be interested. I think that's really important. We have to be interested. We have to seek to understand. We've got to explore what's going on, because I think the more informed we are, what we mustn't do is just blindly commit to things, and that's why it's important that we seek to understand. So having that level of interest is important, and it's definitely a leadership quality.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think going back to the crisis management, I do an awful lot of work with ex-military veterans, and I think that's a lesson that the corporate world could probably learn from, is how they handle crisis, how they handle a situation and remove the peripheral issues that surround that issue, and really concentrate on what the underlying problem is, or what that actual issue is, in order to overcome and adapt and solve that problem.
Absolutely.
A real key skill, and an awful lot of ex-military personnel that come out, they all possess that skill, but they sometimes struggle then to kind of transfer into civilian life. But what you were talking about, I think, is a skill that they are taught, that we don't get taught.
Yeah. But they tend, when you talk about the military, and it's actually the same with very senior, I do a lot of work with the police, and it's the same with senior police officers. They'll often say that some of these officers, they work better in a crisis than they do when it's kind of everything is calm and clear. So you've got to be very, very careful when you're in a leadership position where you're very good at crisis management, that you're not nurturing crisis in order to be useful. That's also really important. So it's really about just having that level of understanding of it, being ready, be ready. Do you know what's really interesting about this stuff? We do it on a personal level all the time. Yeah. We do it on a personal level. You think about it, we absolutely ensure that we can predict, plan for, prevent anything that's going to impact or threaten our personal and home lives and our families. All we need to do is kind of introduce that into how we're working.
So we're kind of talking about now that equipping leaders for future skills with kind of having that eye on what's coming over the hill. What other things would you see as leaders that they need? What other attributes would you think global leaders in particular, I guess, need to be able to carry their business forward?
Do you know what, this might sound a little bit kind of cliche, and you know me, Sharon, that is not my style. But I think what we're going to need, if you're asking me from a global perspective, I'm not sure I'm qualified to really kind of throw this one out there, but I will. I'm opinionated, so I'll still throw it out there. I think what we're going to have to build is a kind of high level of trust. I think when we think about the start of this pandemic, there almost kind of seemed to be a little bit of almost kind of competition between who was dealing with it best. Yeah. You know, really, it's about actually coming together and saying, look, we've got to share information, we've got to communicate, we've got to be clear. So it really is about building the right alliances. It's not just about building alliances, it's the right alliances. So I think that trust, being able to trust what you hear. One of the things that I've avoided through this pandemic is being kind of just saturated by whatever's coming through from the media. What I've watched the government, I've watched them on that podium, I watched what they're saying to me every day, or whenever it is, and that's what I'm watching. That's the only thing I'm watching, because everything else becomes conjecture. And and also I think we've got to, I'm wondering if this will also be the, we're going to start really wondering how effective social media is for clarity, because, some of the stuff out there is just very, I'm going to be professional, very interesting. Not sure it's useful, but it's very interesting. So, yeah.
It is. Keeps us entertained, can't we? In an awful lot of news. What is interesting, what I've seen that's really coming through is people taking responsibility and accountability of their own values, and kind of that community stuff that is really starting to lay those foundations, probably going back maybe 20, 30 years ago. Nice to see some of that coming back.
Well, it's almost like the virtual Queen's Jubilee, isn't it, in the 70s, It's almost like these, and I think it's great, because I think we do as communities, we kind of come together, and I think, what you'll find, though, is somebody's leading that whole kind of premise somewhere, aren't they? Somebody is a power of influence, somebody people want to listen to, and when they tell you to kind of, let's kind of all get out and kind of keep 2 meters apart and have a dance. Can I just say I've not been invited to dance at all?
Okay.
Yet.
Just yet. So anybody out there where I live in this village, invite me to dance, because I will.
I suppose
you're right, community. Yeah.
On that, everyone's dealing with this pandemic differently. Everyone. What's keeping you motivated personally? What are you doing to pass the time and ultimately keep your sanity? I suppose people are interested.
Wow, are they? Are you sure? Not sure.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting question, actually, Ben. Well, to kind of quote Herzberg on this, I am definitely achievement orientated in my motivators. Yeah. So I think for me, actually, having a thread of routine woven into each and every day that gives me a sense of achievement, that can be something big, something small, it can be something linked to my professional life or my personal life. As long as I feel like I've achieved something every day, that definitely keeps me motivated. I think as for kind of what I've been taking advantage of, which I think is doing me a lot of good actually, is the fact we've got permission to go out there and exercise every day. I'm not built for either cycling or running. So the walking has been brilliant. It's allowed me to kind of put some space between me and the house, and me and the husband, which I'm sure he appreciates that as well. And also just kind of being able to enjoy one of my guilty pleasures, which is music of any kind of genre. But I actually am quite into a bit of, Sharon knows, a bit of musical theatre. Yeah, I think it's something I should have done. I should have just gone on the stage. I can't sing, but I should have gone on the stage. So that's what I've been doing. I think getting away and thinking, and also just taking a breath. When we're in this quarantine situation, we're in this kind of, imposed lockdown. I think actually for a lot of people, it's given them the ability just to breathe for a second. What worries me would be if we know we've got another 3 weeks of it, what would worry me if it goes on even longer, because as you said, Ben, this is where people are going to start really feeling it. People are going to feel very isolated, very lonely. And even if you're going out on a walk, you know, you're still on your own, aren't you? You're still on your own. But I think that's what we've got to be conscious of. What I'm finding is when I like it when I pass somebody and I cross the road, or I kind of give them the 2 meters, and we almost kind of say hello. And I've been speaking to people in my village that I didn't even know they lived here.
Yeah,
that's been the other thing. So which I find incredible. So
the whole nodding to people, engaging with people, the communication out on the street that I think across the country had disappeared in the last 3 weeks has come back. And that
nice.
whole the fact that people now are supporting. You spoke about local community groups now leading support functions. It's warming inside to know that actually, regardless of everything that's going on, charities are still taking place, people are still fundraising, people are still willing to put themselves out there and risk themselves for the betterment of their fellow
Indeed.
people.
I think it's a desire to be useful. I think we have a desire to be useful, and we have a desire to be able to say, well, I just didn't sit back, you know. But I also think we do also have to be uber careful, you know. I think one thing that I'm not enjoying is, you know, the kind of random criticism that people will throw out about things that they really didn't know very little about. I think we just have to be, you know, and that's the thing that I kind of, if I was looking at this, if any of my family on social media said anything that I thought just had no substance to it, I would, you know, we'd be having a pretty serious conversation about it. I just want people to kind of concentrate on themselves, concentrate on each other.
Yes.
And actually, when we get back to it, let's kind of really get back to it, because there's a lot of lessons, a lot of life lessons is going on. And what would be a shame is if we forget the life lessons and we forget the, you know, how we've rallied and how we're getting through this, which is all about, honestly, these are the skills and qualities of leadership. It's what you look at. You don't kind of go, you know, like this. You are looking at the bigger picture, and you have a plan. Or you should have a plan.
We all hope we have a plan, and I echo that. I hope that the feelings and the camaraderie remain when we come out of this, and that it's not quickly forgotten.
Absolutely,
because it certainly won't be forgotten by millions. So
billions.
But yeah, across the globe.
Across the globe. Yeah, it is. It's incredible. Incredible.
It's massive value, isn't it, to our lives at this moment in time. But Gill, as ever, thank you for your time this morning. Ben, my TV husband for this morning, thank you. Hope you enjoyed this edition, and we'll be back with the next one. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it, guys. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you, Gill. Wonderful.